Welcome, everybody. This is Jackie Jacob, University of Kentucky. Our speaker is having technical difficulties. She should be here shortly. She's had to restart her computer or something. So we'll see if she makes it okay. In the meantime, if you would like to type in the chat box where you're located, that would be helpful. If you are a University of Kentucky A&R agent and wanting CE credit through the CURS program, you need to indicate at the beginning of the webinar and the end that you are here. So please type in the chat box that you are here so that I can record that you are actually here. Hey, Alicia, you're on mute at the moment. Thanks for being able to get in with your technical difficulties.
Yeah, sorry, man. Of course, whenever I need my computer, that's when it's gonna freeze. So
right. So I say, if you are a University of Kentucky A&R agent wanting CE credits for CURS, you need to put your name and county in the chat box at the beginning and the end of the webinar so that I can verify that you were here the whole time. Anybody else, please just type in the chat box where you're located. That would be helpful. We have somebody from Taylorsville, Kentucky, somebody from, can't see it, oops, from Breckenridge. Oh, that's, we have somebody from Nigeria. Wow. Texas, New York, it's everywhere. Okay, sorry we're a little late getting started. As I said, there was some technical difficulties. My name is Dr. Jackie Jacob. I am the poultry extension person here at the University of Kentucky. As part of my job, I also coordinate the monthly webinars with the small and backyard flocks. I'm losing my voice. Small and backyard flocks community of practice. I won't go into too much detail since we're running late, but today's webinar is on designing a poultry house. Alicia Halbritter from University of Florida will be our presenter today. She's given presentations a few times now over the years and is very good. And so I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A. If I will be muted and no video. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat or the Q&A. If it's a clarification of something she's talking about, my video will come back on and I will interrupt her to get a clarification. Otherwise, the questions will be held to the end. So, excuse me, Alicia, if you want to share your PowerPoint.
it says you need to give me permissions.
Advanced sharing. Why is it? Okay, host and panelists, whoops. Can share hosts and panelists. Okay, should work now. Okay, I am seeing it. As I said, I will be on mute. If you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat box or the Q&A, and I will be monitoring these. Otherwise, I will leave it up to Alicia. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Like Jackie said, my name is Alicia Halbritter. I am an agriculture and natural resources extension agent in Baker County, Florida, which is just west of Jacksonville, so the northeast corner of Florida. And I'm going to give you a brief introduction today to designing and potentially building your small-scale poultry housing. I think here will work. So the first things we need to talk about are the basics. And what we're going to go over today are the space required for your birds, the resources that you need to ensure are incorporated into your poultry housing. We definitely want to talk about protection. Anytime we're thinking of a prey species like poultry, we need to talk about predator protection, the materials that you might incorporate into building your house, the appearance of that house, and then lastly, we'll talk about the storage for all of the different materials and items that you'll have for your poultry. So space is one of the biggest misconceptions that I find with designing small scale poultry housing, especially if you purchase like what I would call, pre-made coops that you just put together yourself. They're already designed. We find these a lot in our fleet and farm stores, Tractor Supply, Rural King, all those kinds of things, and also offered online. So when people don't have building skills, they're typically looking automatically to purchase these, ready-made coops per se. And a lot of the issues I have with those is they don't have the required space that they advertise the number of birds that that coop can house. So they may be a small coop and it'll say, 4 to 6 birds or so in there, and it's really only got probably 3 or 4 square feet and a very tiny run attached to it. So if you are going to purchase one of those coops, typically you would need to build on an additional run onto that to give your chickens more space, unless they're going to be free ranging, and then that could just be their coop area. So there are different requirements based on the types of chickens that you have or types of poultry that you have. So like our Bantam species, whether that be chickens and such, they're going to require obviously a smaller amount of space. They're very small birds. So we're looking at, 1 square foot inside the coop and about 4 square foot per bird in the run. Versus our laying hens or some of our larger chickens, like maybe our meat birds, we're looking at 1.5 to 2 square feet in the coop and 8 to 10 square feet in the run. So you can see, I don't know of any pre-made coops that are offering 10 square feet per chicken there in the run area. That's usually where we find the limited space available. And then your quail, pheasant, or your waterfowl are going to require various spaces requirements as well for each particular species. You can kind of cut that back and mitigate that depending on how your setup is. Again, if they have a chance to free range sometimes or for a portion of the day. But we do want to make sure that they have ample amount of space. All of our poultry species have a pecking order, and those ones low on the pecking order, they need plenty of space to move around those who are in the top of the pecking order, so they're not getting bullied constantly. Hens need space to move away from roosters. All of that, they just kind of need their own little space there in the coop. So make sure you have proper space in your coop and your run. So let's talk a little bit about the resources that you'll need to include inside of your coop. So these are all the things that your chickens require on a daily basis for to meet their minimum standard of care. So we have perches is one of the number one things. Chicks don't need perches, but eventually your adult birds are going to need a perch. So plan that accordingly already into your coop space. This is going to go inside the coop typically. That's where the chickens are going to sleep, and so they feel the most safe. So you want that generally to be in a completely walled area. I do have some clients that put perches out in the run where chickens can perch during the daytime. They may not necessarily be sleeping there, but we'll call it a chicken jungle gym where they can get up and move around and play and have some space above the floor as well to move around in the run. But typically perches are going to be inside of your coop where your chickens are going to sleep. You need approximately 6 inches of perch space for each chicken, and that's just accommodating for the width of their chest. That's the space that they're going to take up with a little bit of wiggle room in between the two chickens next to each other to allow for some airflow and such. And typically we don't want our chicken perches to be over 4 feet. And turkeys, we don't really want them to be 4 feet or higher either. When those birds are jumping down, especially our birds that are a lot less likely to fly, I wouldn't exactly call them flightless, but they typically are hopping more than they are flying. If they're jumping more than 4 feet down, you can cause leg issues, particularly in our heavier poultry species like our turkeys and some of our heavier species of chickens. And then I always recommend placing your roosts or your perches away from your nesting areas, and that prevents your chickens sleeping in the nesting areas and the roosts. And you never want to have a case where your nesting areas are under your roosts, because a lot of that manure is going to be produced overnight while those chickens are roosting on the perch. And then you don't want that, of course, to fall into your nesting material. So perches are one of the main things you're going to need for our chickens and our turkeys. Quails will need some sort of a perch. Most of your waterfowl are going to sleep on the floor area. They won't roost, although I do have a Muscovy duck that was raised with chickens, and he roosts with my chickens every night. So they can potentially roost if they get it in their mind. The next thing, of course, most of our poultry we're going to be raising for eggs, so we need somewhere for them to lay their eggs. So we need nest boxes for each individual species. If you have a multi-species coop where you have chickens and turkeys and ducks and what you may have all together, those will likely require different types of nesting spaces. Our chickens obviously can get up into like a stacked nesting area, where our turkeys and our ducks are typically going to lay on a floor space, and so they need a dedicated space there to lay. So let's just talk about chickens first. Their minimum is going to be a 12 by 12 nesting box. Larger birds may need larger nests, especially if you're talking about ducks or turkeys. They are especially going to need something larger than a 12 by 12 box. We typically say that you want to have 1 nest box for every 4 hens, and then at least 1 extra. So if you have 12 chickens or 12 hens, then you would want 3 boxes plus 1 extra. So 4 total boxes there. And that just, we used to say that you need a nesting box for every chicken, but generally they're all going to lay in the same nesting box anyways. And so to accommodate for those smaller scale housings, it's easier to have less nesting space available, because it does eat up a lot of your space there in a small coop. When you're talking about looking at designing those nest boxes, we want to make sure that they have some kind of lip on them. So your chickens, if they're in there moving around or scratching bedding around, they're not pushing eggs out of the nest box and cracking them. Cracked eggs are a big problem in the coop. It encourages chickens to eat those eggs. Once they figure out that that's a food source, you can start having egg eaters in the coop, and that is always detrimental when you're looking especially for keeping these birds for their eggs. And typically chickens are going to want, or any poultry species is going to want to nest in a darker area. So most people will have their nest boxes, facing away from the sunlight or a window, or turned away of some sort, or covered with a curtain, something that's going to still allow some bit of airflow so it doesn't get too hot in there, but allows those chickens or your birds that privacy and that darkness that they need to feel safe and secluded in there. All right. And again, yeah, just if you have other poultry species, then we want to ensure that we have nesting materials and space for them. You can put pretty much whatever you want inside of the nest boxes, whether that be hay or straw, shavings. They have reusable or washable nest mats as well. If you have the ability to slope those nest boxes back and allow the eggs to roll away from the chickens into some type of contained area where they can't get to, that keeps your eggs really clean, reduces the chance of having any breakage or training any of your chickens to eat eggs as well. So that's always a bonus, but we understand in a lot of small scale poultry housing that is not always possible. Of course, these are living animals, so they are going to need feed and water. That is one of the biggest things there for our animals. We want to make sure that they are cared for 24/7. When we're looking at designing our feeders and waters and what types we might use, there are tons of DIY options. There are also a lot of commercially available options that you can purchase for the different, various species that you may have or mixed species flocks. We always want to make sure that our feeders and waters, that the lip of them is at the top of the bird's back, and that prevents them from getting into it and scratching materials out, and ensures that they're still able to reach that without dirtying the water or the food or wasting too much of that product. So always at the back of the bird's height. So something that is maneuverable would be beneficial if you plan to have, chicks at some point and full grown hens at some point, or you'll have, the different stages of your poultry life stages. We'll want to make sure that you can move those feeders and waters for them to get to. We want to make sure that they have free access to feed and water at all times. So if you're ever going to lock your chickens up into a confined space, whether that include the coop and the run or just the coop, maybe you're going to lock your coop every night and not allow them access to the run, then we want to make sure the feed and water is inside of the coop. They need to be able to access that 24/7 in the middle of the night, whenever they feel like it. So wherever your chickens are going to be contained, ensure that their feed and water is contained in there with them. We typically say that we need to provide about 3 inches of feeder space per bird. If you have food available 24/7 and you're not feeding them necessarily like only what they can eat in a day, you can back that off a little bit, because then your birds will have, access whenever. So, if you are feeding them once a day, all that they consume during that one period, and all of your chickens are eating at one time, then they must have that 3 inches of feeder space, which allows them to eat and not compete for food, and potentially have issues with your pecking order there. I always recommend automatic watering systems for small scale poultry housing. The more birds you have, obviously automatic water is almost a necessity. But I'll say, even for myself, I have a relatively small flock at times. Right now I only have, less than 15 birds, and even then they are consuming a lot of water in a daily period. And so if I'm filling that up twice a day, it's just a lot more maintenance. Those automatic watering systems just ensure that they have water all of the time. Of course, with any automatic system, you need to make sure that you're cleaning that and checking them and making sure that it's functioning properly, not dripping, getting water in the coop or anything, accumulating mold, or if you have waterfowl, there'll be a lot of feed and such in there, so you'll need to clean those frequently. But highly recommend if you can have automatic watering systems. And then just ensure anytime that there's going to be a power outage, or a reduction in water availability, that you have stored water available to be able to water your birds. And then if you have a really small coop and you're having issues with humidity in the coop, then I would highly recommend removing that water from the coop and putting it in the run. And that way you can reduce a lot of moisture inside of the coop. Moisture plus ammonia from their droppings is a bad environment for our chickens and for us. It creates a lot of smell, creates a lot of issues with chickens' respiratory systems, with ducks' respiratory systems. Is a plethora for bacteria to grow and thrive. So we just want to make sure that we're reducing the moisture content in our coop if it becomes a problem. All right, so ventilation is going to be a huge aspect for our poultry. Poultry have very sensitive respiratory systems, and so we need to make sure that we are, allowing some air to come through that coop. Again, like I was talking about, their manure is very high in ammonia. It can, start to smell rather quickly if that coop's not drying out, or if there's too much buildup there inside the coop. So making sure that your coop has air movement is essential. That's another reason I kind of steer away from a lot of those pre-made coops, because I just find they just really lack, you know, open spaces for air to move through. They might have one window in the entire thing, you know, and there's no crosswind available. Um, or they just might only have, you know, a door for the chickens to access out, and then a small access door for humans to get in and clean the coop out and stuff. They might not even have a window or something that you can open. So, um, you know, if you're able to modify those, that's great, but just making sure anything that you're looking at purchasing or building has ventilation installed in there. And that's really easy to do. You don't have to have, you know, a fancy one like this with the windows and such. You can just, you know, drill holes across the top of it, making sure, of course, that we're covering those holes with some type of hardware cloth or welded wire, something to protect from predators. But any type of air movement in there is great. You don't have to have, you know, fans and such. Depending on where you are in the region, but typically windows or any type of ventilation is going to be best on the south or the east side. Generally, that's how the wind moves through our geographic region. And so that's going to help cover a lot of ventilation issues there, even if you have reduced ventilation aspects. And then if you have ventilation that can't be like closed at night or something, like a window you're going to close every night, then we want to make sure our roofs are away from the windows or ventilation system to prevent a draft. And that's especially important in the cooler months because our chickens can't regulate their body temperatures very well. And so if they are sitting there sleeping and that cold air is moving in, they don't have, you know, much ability to heat themselves. So make sure we're thinking about that aspect as well. Chickens do need light. So, of course, you know, most of us don't live in an area where it's dark for a good portion of the day. We have a good, you know, 10 hours or so, 10 to 12 hours of daylight this time of year, depending where you are in the region. But chickens are photosensitive. That's what governs a lot of their bodily processes. Particularly one of importance to us is their egg laying process. They need light in order to have maximum egg production. So I recommend providing some type of artificial light or having electricity outside in your coop somewhere, so you can provide artificial light at times. And that just helps when even if you don't use it year round, you can, you know, help spur your chickens out of a delay when they're not laying because of molting, or they're not laying because of you know, decreased light now in our short day periods around the fall and the winter. You can produce or reduce your aspects with predators. There's a lot of benefits to having light. So even if you're not using one year round, it's always great to have the option there to install a light. Or if you raise chicks, it's a great option to have electricity there to have a heat lamp or some type of heating element there for your chicks. So if you want year-round egg production, again, that artificial light will be necessary. 140-watt light bulb is more than enough light for our small coops to stimulate their senses there. Most people are going to put that over a feeder or water and have that on some type of timer, so it will run for 2 to 4 hours after sunset, just depending on how much day length we're getting in the natural daylight. And again, not necessarily a requirement to have in your small coops, but always a benefit. Protection is going to be one of the main aspects you need to look at when you're designing a small scale poultry house. A lot of the ones that you might purchase at a feed and farm store or something can be kind of rickety. They might use poultry wire instead of hardware cloth or some sorts. The poultry wire is like those hexagon or octagonal type openings versus a welded wire or hardware cloth are really small. They're square, and that might be, you know, an eighth or a quarter of an inch opening there between the wires. And so to me, poultry wiring is to keep chickens in. It does nothing to keep anything else out. It's easily broken. It rusts really easily. And so unfortunately, it is a cheaper option, but it is not the best for predator protection. So we're looking at predator protection. We need to look at that hardware cloth or welded wire there. Usually when we are setting up our poultry housing, we need to install that wire there on the run, and then any open areas you might have in the coop as well. And then you can also bury that wire. So say you have your run fencing like here in this graphic I have on the slide with your chickens behind it. And then you have your ground level there is that green line. You should be able to bury that wire at least 12 inches beneath the ground and then kick it out in an L shape or a toe kick kind of formation there, out away from the coop. And, then you would replace your soil over top of that, gravel, anything of that sort. And that prevents any of our digging predators. It's really going to deter them. So as soon as they hit that wire, if they're digging, they're going to realize, there's a full stop there. Most of them are not intelligent enough or, adventurous enough really to back all the way up another 12 inches and dig under and realize that that wire, stops at a certain point and they could get under it. Just that 12 inches is usually sufficient enough. So if you have a run that's a permanent structure, I always recommend burying that wire there. And you wouldn't want to bury poultry wiring. You would want to bury a hardware cloth or something of that sort, because that poultry wiring, again, rusts really readily and it would deteriorate rapidly in a soil contact situation there. Some people install electric fences on the outside of their runs as well to deter predators. That's really just an optional thing there. My chickens are, right next to the woods, and I'm in North Florida. We have tons of predators available, but I've never had predator issues in my coop. So if I did, I probably would look into an electric fencing there. And then, like I was talking about the ventilation point, if you do any type of holes, anything larger than a quarter, your raccoons can stick their hand in, a snake could get in. There's a lot of entry points available on a coop there for our predators to get in and potentially mess with our chickens or kill our chickens. So anything larger than a quarter, we're going to want to cover that up with wire or something to block those predators there from. And then of course, you'll want to have overhead protection in your run, all areas across the United States and, internationally are going to have overhead predators like hawks, birds of prey or hawks and owls, probably the biggest issues here in the United States. But some of our other predators can climb like raccoons and possums and such. So your runs and your coops need to have some type of solid roof on them as well. All right, so now we've talked about the different aspects that you need to include in your design of your small scale poultry house. Let's talk a little bit about the materials that you might use for that coop. The two things you really always need to think about is if they are durable and they are cleanable. We're talking about chickens that are going to be really rough on stuff. They scratch stuff, they peck stuff, and they poop everywhere. So we want to make sure that we can, maintain that poultry house into the way that we want it to be. Of course, this is going to be something that's going to be outside. So we're going to make sure that all of the wood that we use is pressure treated to ensure that, we have longevity for our investment there. And then again, that's one big reason I steer away from a lot of those pre-made coops is they are not pressure treated typically, and they will deteriorate really rapidly outside if they don't have some type of roofing structure or something over them. If you don't have a chicken coop yet and you're looking at, building one, I always suggest putting in some type of vinyl flooring. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, pre-made, the most expensive vinyl flooring. I have a producer here, as you can see, that uses feed bags, and he just stapled those to the floor, And that way there's, that vinyl-like material there that's easily cleaned. Water can run right off of it. You can easily sweep that and such. And it protects any wood underlayment that's there as well. So if your coops are raised up there, on like a plywood base or something of that sort, or board base, that wood is going to deteriorate with all of the water and manure that's potentially in that coop. So anytime we can protect that expensive investment, we're going to have a lot of feed bags available, so you might as well put them to use. You can also buy, vinyl glue-on tiles and stuff. At the Dollar Tree sells them. Five Below sells them. Walmart sells them. They're really cheap, especially for our small coops. It's a very minimal investment for something that's going to make your maintenance of that coop a lot better. A lot of people typically use sand or gravel in the run, and that just helps, one, with mud control, and then also clean up as well. But you could, just have bare dirt, whatever your natural soil is there. You could have shavings. There are a lot of options there. Just do some research about the maintenance of each of those, because obviously, shavings you're going to have to remove and replace. The natural dirt there, obviously, you don't necessarily have to do anything with that. And then sand or gravel is going to be a rather expensive initial investment, depending on the size of your coop. So options there, but again, those are both easily just washed down, rather than, the physical maintenance of having to remove and replace shavings or something of that sort. And then you can always, find new purpose for the things that you have on hand. You don't have to go out and buy new things for this coop. If you have materials available, try and find a use for those, like those feed bags. You can see here, a producer used wallpaper for their coop in order to make it easily cleanable. So it's a vinyl wallpaper they installed in there. You don't have to go all out and make yours that fancy there, but it makes cleaning that, particularly a lot easier in that area where the roosts are. So that brings us to the appearance of your coop as well. Just because it's for chickens doesn't mean it can't be pretty. And that's one of the big things I hear a lot is, people they think we're going all out for our chickens, or, chicken Taj Mahals and things like that. But this is a space that you're going to be interacting with all of the time. So you really need it to look and feel the way that makes you happy. And, your chickens, as long as they're provided for with all of those resources, they don't necessarily care how it looks. So you have to care how it looks and, determine that factor there. So there are various shapes of chicken coops that you can have. They don't all just have to be a square rectangular building. You can see, this triangular shape here. I see a lot for our what we call chicken tractors, and so they are movable structures that you can, drag around to different areas to give your chickens fresh forage for them. We see hoop houses, triangles, A-frames, and then, of course, a lot of square and rectangular buildings. You can make this a space for you to enjoy. So, this picture here in the middle here, they've got some landscaping there that color coordinates with the building that they have. They've got some decor. They have a bench and a table there in order to enjoy. You can really dress it up to however that you prefer. Or you can go all out. You can do, all full-scape landscaping. You can paint the coordinating colors and, have decor and decorations and holiday decor I've seen people put up for their chicken coops. There is tons of options there, to really just make the space your own. And again, as long as your resources for your chickens are there, everything else is going to be just for you to look at and enjoy. This is a space that's going to be on your property. You want to make sure that it, meets the appearance of the rest of your property, that your neighbors are, happy with that, especially if you have roosters or geese, or waterfowl that are loud, anything of that sort. If we make it visually appealing for them, they might be a little more accommodating on some of those annoyances that our livestock can create for our neighbors as well. But the appearance is really based on you. You can make it however that you want. And so the last thing I want to discuss today is storage. I see this overlooked quite frequently for our chicken coops because you don't have anything for your chickens to store yet. And so you're not thinking about incorporating that space. So usually this is a secondhand thought. Once you get chickens, you realize that you have feed and medicines, all kinds of stuff you could potentially have for your birds there, that you need someplace to store. It doesn't have to be super fancy. You don't have to have the vinyl flooring, but I would recommend looking at different storage containers. Majority of people probably are using aluminum trash cans or some type of plastic trash can tote, sort of situation for their feed. But it's going to be stored in relation to your coop. Make sure that it's away from any rats or mice or predators that might get in there and get into that feed, because that can obviously you don't want to be feeding them and wasting your money on feed for those animals, but you also don't want to potentially diseases into your flock. So make sure they're away from pests, insects included, all of that sort is going to be your biggest factors for storage there. But think about, and like this bottom photo here also has a sink and tables and stuff where they could wash and store their eggs. If you're going to sell eggs, that's a big component there, to have somewhere dedicated to managing those eggs for sale. And so that can be, a beneficial incorporation into your coop space. Obviously your chickens wouldn't have access there, but an option for you. And then I typically always recommend keeping extra bedding and supplies on hand, because you'll never know when you might need those. All right, so I didn't want to go too much into the specifics of building a chicken coop today, because it's really going to be individualistic into how many chickens you are looking at providing for, what your building skills are, what materials are available in your area. And there's tons of options, of free plans online, paid plans online. Pinterest is your best friend if you're looking for poultry plans. There's all different types of styles and houses. And then, of course, you can always look on social media as well. There are lots of options on all the different various chicken pages and stuff. People are extremely willing to help you put together that coop that's going to be perfect for you. But, sit down, draw it out, think about all the aspects there, and make sure you're including all those various things that are going to support you in your poultry journey. And then reach out if you have any questions or need any support.
Very good. Yeah, the topic was designing, not building. So you went over the key things, and I did like that all your feed were in the pictures were in cans. They weren't lying around and attracting rats and mice and all that kind of problems that you can have. We have 2 questions that came in through Q&A. They're not really related to the topic, but if you want to give your opinion on it. One is, which one is of most advantage between layers starting laying early at 16 weeks or laying late at 23 weeks? That's a depend question, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends if this is like a business model for you or just something to enjoy. Obviously the earlier that your chickens are laying, the better that it's going to be all around, no matter really what you're involved in, because you're going to get getting eggs sooner. Your investment as far as your coop and all of that feed
Oh, I think we lost our speaker. She's trying to answer that question. I will finish her question answer for her. Depends on the person or business or personal model breed. It also depends on the nutrition of the flock. The best, if you're trying to especially do business, is to follow the recommendations for the breed that you have. Some come in early, some come in late. Trying to start a hen that is designed to be a certain body weight, bringing her in early can cause problems with all sorts of reproductive issues if you do that. So that's a big depend. Then what do you recommend for backyard poultry in extremely hot temperatures around 45 to 50 degrees that's Celsius for the Americans? Again, it's not quite with the building of the, well, I guess it would help with the design. You would need to have good airflow through that, getting the wind, what are they called? Wind chill effect. So, making sure that, especially if you have electricity, having some fans running to try and cool them off, having breeds that are adaptable for that kind of temperature, that sort of thing. You may have discussed this earlier, but how many chickens could you house in the last coop you showed? I don't remember what that was, so that would vary, but she did start out at the beginning telling the square feet that is required for different types of birds. So you might want to watch the recording, which should be up later tonight or early tomorrow, that discusses the thing of area that is required per person. You're welcome. Okay, some questions in here. Do you have any suggestions for controlling rats in the coop? Having a pest control program is essential. So tracking them, you don't necessarily want to use bait stations, but making sure that the feed is controlled so that they're not attracted for the feed. So that's where I was mentioning that the metal cans had lids on them, the metal being harder to get into. You may not want to have any feed overnight, so you want only feed them what they're going to finish up during the day, so that it's not feed that's going to attract them. Make sure there's no nesting areas, managing the facility, trying to keep them out. So again, it depends on the setup for the facility. Access to the slides. No, I don't believe we give access to the slides, but the webinars are recorded and the recordings are posted. So you can rewatch anytime that you would like. We don't necessarily give away the slides that the speakers have put together. Those are proprietary, so that, basically stealing their work. So while you're thinking of any more questions, because we still do, excuse me, have a few more minutes, and Alicia may come back on, depending on her computer problem. Next month's webinar is me. I will be discussing on managing a poultry flock on pasture. So if you're interested in that, that will be whatever the Tuesday, first Tuesday in December is. I think it's like the 5th or something. Always 3 p.m. Eastern time. If you are one of the agents and you've signed up on CURS, please read the description where it tells you to click here to register through the e-extension system to get the link for the webinar. Any more questions? I can most likely handle them as well as Alicia did, I hope. If it's referring to her slides, I can't do it because, they were her slides and I don't know what she had where. So, well, not seeing any more questions. The ANR agents, remember to type your name again that you are leaving, so that I know that you attended the entire time. I did put in the website for us that has the link to all the upcoming webinars that we have. We have already booked next year's webinars, January through December of 2024. So hopefully there's something there for you. Remember that the webinars are all recorded and available for later viewing. So you can go to the website and link to some of the past webinars that may be of interest. If you don't see something that you would like discussed in a webinar, such as, trying to manage a poultry flock in extremely hot temperatures, we could maybe try and put something together on that. Thank you again for coming. And if you don't have any more questions, then that is it. I'll just stay on for a few more minutes to make sure all the University of Kentucky ANR agents have confirmed for me that they are here, so that they get credit for attending. Those that arrive late may want to watch the recording to get the things that you missed at the beginning. Okay, Sharon's here, yeah. And Steve, yeah. There it is. Anna Denning, are you here? Oh, she left without saying goodbye. So, don't know that I can give her credit. Everybody else, I think I have given credit for, especially Carol and David, who were here the whole time. Thank you, Meredith. Okay, any other questions before I shut down the system? Pam, you're always welcome. It's always great to have you here. Oh, there's another question in Q&A. What's this? Oh, thank you. As always, very informative. Thank you. Okay, I am shutting down. Everybody have a good evening, wherever you are, or morning if you're, in Nigeria. Bye-bye.